some big news out of the Barclays Women's Super League, which is the top English flight. They announced that they are expanding from 12 teams to 14 teams for the start of the 26-27 season. So that is 2 years from now. They've agreed that the 3 teams will be promoted from the newly renamed WSL2, which was formerly the championship. And that'll happen at the end of next season. So the top 2 teams will be promoted automatically. And then there'll be a playoff between the 12th place WSL team and the 3rd place WSL2 team. So every season, there are going to be 2 teams promoted and 2 teams relegated. So it'll be the top team promoted, the bottom team relegated. And then the 13th team and the 2nd place team will compete in a relegation playoff every single year. So 14 teams now, Christine. Is this the right move for the WSL?
I don't think this is the right move right now. I understand the goals that they have and what they're trying to achieve, but there is great hazard in expanding the league too quickly, especially when you've already had recent conversations about potentially putting a freeze on promotion and relegation, which would change essentially the product that you put out as well for WSL. Right now, the league lacks significant parity. So I think that addressing those issues first and foremost probably would be more wise than shuttling in a potentially new crop of promoted teams that may not be ready to compete financially, venue wise, in terms of infrastructure that we see sometimes on the men's side of the game as well. I think that throwing into the mix this new round robin playoff scenario adds another catalyst to whether or not this could ultimately achieve or just go down really, really hard, very fastly. I think that the challenge is there. Yes, you're taking a very, very high risk potential reward approach to this that, I mean, could have some payoffs, but I think that ultimately I see more of a downside here.
I see this as an upside, guys, because yes, Christine, it has been constant rotation, not a lot of parity. The last 3 years, the team promoted from the championship into the WSL immediately got relegated again. But now the board is guaranteeing that 2 teams are going to be promoted. So you could stay up for an extra year because you're competing against another team that was also in the WSL2 the year prior. So I think this would force investment because as ownership and as a club, if you're one of the 2 teams promoted, you have a greater chance of staying up there because there's 2 of you that are coming from the WSL or the WSL2 at this point, right? I think this could force, which is the goal and the plan, more investment and support from the clubs and the owners.
I think the problem is they're not currently in the position of forcing that same investment from the presently and repeat the first league WSL teams. Right now, the big 4 in this league are responsible for 2/3 of the overall league revenue, whereas the disparities are so great. And when you want to look at systemic issues like the fact that these teams are linked with their men's first teams as well, and they also suffer as a result of how well they fare, you see that there are a lot of moving parts within the league presently that I think need to be addressed first and foremost. When you talk about the capacity to compete and you see a team like a Liverpool on the women's side who have made great strides more recently, but still have issues with housing and venue. Same thing goes for Spurs. Same thing goes even worse for teams like Reading and Wolverhampton and things like that, that are just not really at the level to strive to a capacity of an Arsenal, who now are playing all their home games at the Emirates, or Chelsea, who have a $1 million player on their books. Like they just, I think that what happens is we're at the risk here at this impasse of thinning the talent pool further.
Christine, we are struggling to hear you, my friend. Okay, we dropped her. Jess, where do you stand on this side of it? I was like loving the
so was I. Yeah, I was all for it. I think that my biggest worry is the fact that there hasn't been enough investment in these lower tier teams. First of all, that playoff game makes 0 sense to me. First of all. Secondly, who's going to be investing in these teams and what does that look like for them? I'm excited to a certain extent. I just don't want to see it I just don't want to witness it fail at the end of the day. And so when these teams move up into this league, I hope that the competition is just going to be top tier, which is very difficult to do. I think NWSL is one of the best in the world, where top to bottom is, very high competitively. But whereas in Europe, the top teams are crushing these bottom tier teams. And so I'm worried that there's not going to be enough investment, and I hope and pray someone steps up to the table like a Michelle Kang just to invest into these teams. But then on the other side of things, I want to see the competition, be equal, and it's a tough road, and so we'll see how it goes.
So we will have a Michelle Kang team in the WSL next year because the London City Lionesses, they have been promoted, so they will make it to this top flight. Jess, does that change? Because now she's going to be there. Like, for the last 3 years, we've seen the same team promoted and relegated: Reading, Bristol City, and now Crystal Palace, just 1 year up. You mentioned someone like Michelle Kang. She's now involved. Will that change this year with London City Lionesses in the top flight?
I really hope it does, because you see Michelle Kang taking charge, and this is a successful team. She got the right players to be relegated, and now I want to see these other organizations follow suit. If you're going to join this league, what did Michelle Kang do? Because this is what worked. And so that's what I'm hoping for with these clubs who are bumping up with London City.
Hey, Christine.
Sorry, guys. Yeah, I don't know why my mic decides to do that periodically. I suspect it's my laptop hardware. Apologies to the herd in the chat. I have important things to say here. I was really fired up, and then I went away.
You were on a roll, dude, and I was feeling it.
So I see the questions in the chat about the playoffs and the playoffs not making sense. I do want to address that. So yes, this is foreign, largely in Europe, outside of, say, things that are similar. If you're familiar with like the Belgian Pro League or like the Scottish Premiership, they have something similar. Also, Liga MX Femenil, with the Apertura and Clausura, which isn't the same as the round robin format that they're striving for. Ultimately, long story short, TLDR, what they're trying to do is get more eyeballs on the bigger teams in the latter tail of the season to bring broadcasting eyes back on and get that buy-in from fans, if that makes sense. That's ultimately what I see them doing there, because you're going to see more of the Chelsea Arsenal matchups, the Man City United matchups, and you don't typically get to see those in the tail end of the season because they've already ran their course, given how the chips fell based on the scheduling earlier on. That's a completely foreign concept if you're looking in England for a playoff. That's far more Americanized than what I would have anticipated ever seeing out of them. I understand the thought behind it. I don't know that it's going to generally help with advancing the competitiveness of the league wholly. I get that, like, okay, yeah, maybe you want to strive to be in the top 6 now, but if you're only going to get plundered and then add more fixtures to your schedule and more wear and tear on legs than there was previously, I think that there's also arguments that could go negatively as far as players go.
If I'm ownership and I have money to invest in a club, and I have the opportunity to potentially keep my team in the top flight for more than one season based on my investment and what I'm going to do, I'm going to do that. And I think that's ultimately the goal of the WSL. They did came out with a statement saying, quote, "Our priority is to find a route that would benefit the whole women's game pyramid." And they believe that this is the next evolution of women's professional football that is going to raise the minimum standards, create distinction, and incentivize investment across the board. And I see where they're coming from, because if you're the WSL 2 team that finishes second, you're not guaranteed promotion. You have to go into this relegation playoff game, which is entirely different. But I think that gives you more hope, because you're now like, okay, I can prove that I can beat this team and then make it into the top flight. But the same goes on the other end of it. If you're second to last, as an owner, I would put more investment into my team in the top flight if they finish 13th out of 14th, knowing that they have to now go play a relegation playoff game with a team that's fighting for everything to get promoted. That's where I think we're going to see the investment. It's not going to happen.
You're talking sense, Lisa, but unfortunately, if, for example, Wolverhampton men are floundering, that money is not coming to the women's side. And that's what they need to fix first and foremost, in my opinion, if they want to move forward like this. I just don't think that they're in a good enough position with what they have, given this past season. We're talking about Man United women getting displaced because their first team, we're experiencing too many of those issues still to say, oh, this is for the growth of the women's game. Fix the underpinning issues that are at the foundation level, in my opinion, and then let them spread their wings.
But those,
Give them
so many of those
regular,
issues, Christine, are on. I'm not disagreeing. There's a lot of
yeah,
systemic issues there, but that's on the men's side of the clubs. A lot of these WSL teams don't have the power to change that right now.
right. And what I'm saying is they have to, because they need to start looking at them as two separate entities, brick wall between them. Their revenues are their revenues. Their revenues are their revenues. Here's the percentage of money that we're giving to the women's side to help fund that as an investment going forward. And I think that that will rectify a lot of the problems that are happening. They need to stop being treated as an afterthought. And once we arrive at that impasse, then we can have a conversation about how you continue to maintain a competitive level in this league that already is floundering.
Potentially see it happening. So right now the clubs have all voted that the WSL will expand to 14 teams from 12 teams. It's just now waiting official approval from the FA board, and this won't happen again for 2 more seasons. It'll be the 26-27 season where we see this officially take place.